All right, folks, welcome to today's webinar. I do see some familiar names here in the attendees list, which is really great. So y'all will know kind of what to expect from the webinar from me and from the Utah Domestic Violence Coalition. So this is part of a webinar series that we're doing for the spring and summer of 2020. We do know that many of you are home. I am definitely home, loving life with my cats. So if you do hear the sweetest of meows, those are my sweet cats, just letting us know that they are here and they are ready for this webinar. So first things first, this webinar is interactive. Believe it or not, I love to interact with people. Sitting in front of a computer in my kitchen sounds like fun, but I also would love if people would, interact and answer questions and, give some feedback, right? So this is what your webinar control panel looks like. If it does not look like this, then go ahead and click that little orange button, the little orange arrow, and that's going to expand your control panel. So there's a couple different options. There's this raise hand option. And so if I ask a question like, hey, how many of you love cats? You can click that and I can get a number of how many people in here love cats. So down here at the bottom, this question for staff option, I would love for you to utilize that right now. So we will utilize that throughout the presentation. I will be answering questions, or excuse me, asking questions, and you can answer that way. Or if you have questions, those go directly to me, and I'll be able to answer those, hopefully in real time. And you will maybe notice some clickety-click sounds. I do have a mechanical keyboard, so sometimes those clicks can be kind of loud. Okay, so I would love for everyone in that question box. I would love for everyone to tell me where they're from, what they do. Are you a system advocate? Are you law enforcement? Are you a community member that's just like, heck, I definitely need to know a little bit more about financial abuse? Go ahead and type in that question box who you are, what you do. All right, we have a couple folks popping in. Ooh, we got a couple victim advocates. We got a couple folks from the Children's Justice Center. Ooh, a couple Intermountain Healthcare folks. Ooh, I'm seeing a lot of Ogden folks in here. I'm definitely in Ogden. That's where I live, so it's exciting to see. Ooh, a couple LCSWs, a couple therapists. Awesome, awesome. Some community advocates, system advocates. Nice, and volunteer folks. Ooh, volunteer coordinators, that's great. Yay, we have folks from all over the state. We got a couple friends in Moab, some Logan folks. Yay, I see some shout outs to O-Town. I'm definitely feeling that. All right, that's so great. Ooh, it looks like we have some folks that are working with US folks from the US that may be living abroad. So that's pretty cool. That's really great. It seems like we have a lot of wonderful folks in here. Ooh, we got DC in here too. So, all right. Okay. So that was excellent. We have a bunch of folks on this webinar, so it looks like we're going to get a bunch of great feedback. So next thing is, who are we? Who is this person speaking to you, right? So I work with the Utah Domestic Violence Coalition, and we are the state domestic violence coalition that is recognized by the federal government. So basically what we do is we provide support to folks that serve survivors of domestic and sexual violence. So we do trainings, education, program overviews, and technical assistance. And when I talk about technical assistance on a coalition level, what I'm talking about is not someone reaching out to me and saying, heck, I can't get my mouse to connect to my laptop. I mean, I probably could help you with that, like low key, but what we're talking about is you reaching out to us, reaching out to me and asking, hey, what are best practices on working with survivors? What should I do in this situation? Is there any, research or literature that you can lead me to that could potentially help me with, working with folks? And so that's basically what I do, right? Is I help people help other people, right? Yeah, and it seems like most of there's a bunch of names here on the attendee list that have reached out to me. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with the technical assistance and the work that I do. So here is a little slide about me. So my name is Andy Tremonti, and I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator for the Coalition. So I provide training, outreach, and education for folks all across the state of Utah, right? Do a bunch of webinars, stuff like that. So if you've listened to any of the other webinars that we have, you definitely have probably heard my voice before. And sometimes I do get recognized in public because of my voice, which is really interesting. Never had that happen before. But my education history is in psychology and women and gender studies. So that fits pretty well with what we talk about, right? Especially in these presentations. So I have about 9 years of working with Two-Spirit and LGBTQIA folks and other underserved survivors of all sorts of trauma, right? So I have a pretty unique, pretty interesting skill set, right? So in these pictures here, this is a little dive into what is Andy, right? So the picture on the left is a little miniature, it's a little orc from Dungeons and Dragons. So I do play Dungeons and Dragons. I build terrain, I paint miniatures. Art is a big outlet for me, especially with the work that I do, and that's a really big self-care. And it's really hard to kind of think about all the difficult things that we're dealing with and throughout the day, throughout the week, and especially the stuff that's happening right now, when I have to paint the highlight of the folds on an orc's leather tunic, and then the picture on the right, these are my sweet cats. You may hear their sweet voices here soon. The top one is Todico, and the bottom one is, actually, the top one's Jorge. Ooh, don't tell him I forgot which cat he was. Top one's Jorge, and the bottom one's Todico. And last but not least, we have a little picture of Sassy here, a little Sasquatch. So I do live in Ogden. I camp, I hike in Ogden, and I definitely have a little bit of a fear of Sasquatch. Definitely don't know when Sassy is gonna pop out on those hiking trails, and so definitely have a little fear there. So now you know a little bit about me, kind of a little bit what to expect from this. So we now are going to get right into it. So we are going to talk about financial abuse, right? So the presentation we are using today is from the Allstate Foundation Purple Purse Moving Ahead curriculum. And I did include this in a downloadable handout. So if you look on your control panel and if you go down under the handouts section, you can click on that link and you can definitely download that. They are available on the Purple Purse website for free. They also have guides for survivors. They have really cool resources. They have this really cool program where you can, it's like being in the day, a day of being a survivor who's experiencing financial abuse, and you have to make decisions, and it tells you outcomes, it tells you about statistics, resources, and stuff like that. So that can be a really good resource, especially for service providers. If maybe service providers haven't maybe been in the field for a while, or maybe want more detailed understanding. So In this module, we are going to talk about financial abuse. We're going to talk a little bit about how to increase our safety and go, dive a little bit into, potentially starting over, especially financially. And if you notice the webinar link list that was sent out via the newsletter or the Facebook or on our website, you'll notice that module 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are going to be presented in, I believe, July. So yeah, we're going to cover a lot of cool stuff this spring and this summer. So definitely register for those because they'll be a really great information and resources for y'all. All right, so understanding financial abuse, keeping safe, and starting over. Okay. So our objectives for the next hour are to identify financially abusive relationships. We're going to talk a little bit about some of these common things that are happening, these things that we may see, maybe things that we overlook, or things that we assume to be romantic or just part of relationships, right? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about financial safety planning, divorce and child support, disclosing abuse, and some privacy challenges. All right, so there we go. Advance that little slide there. Okay, so this is what I want a little feedback from you. Okay, so I want you to take a moment to kind of reflect on not only what you grew up knowing or understanding about finances, about money, about having money, about maybe not having money, but also I would love for you to, in that question box, I would love for you to answer, give me a little feedback, like, what messages were you given growing up? Even what are your feelings currently about money, right? Have the things that you've learned growing up, have they impacted you today, right? So type into that question box and let's see what kind of experiences y'all have had with money, what kind of views you have on money. All right, so money doesn't grow on trees. Yeah, I can't even remember how many times I've heard that, right? Even today, money doesn't grow on trees, right? All right, what else do we have here? So maybe hearing that, okay, or knowing that parents, have always paid bills on time, right? Maybe that finances, bills, stuff like that, talking up about money is private, right? Let's see. So maybe, oh, this is interesting. So maybe we had a stay-at-home parent, stay-at-home mom, who, decided not to work in order to, maybe raise kids, and maybe money or finances being assigned to the other parent or another parent, right? Some fear about retirement or loss of finances. Yeah. Let's see. Little transparency or education from family. Yep. Partners or married folks having joint accounts. Yeah, that's a big one, right? And that's one of those these like social, these things that are socialized, these things that are even romanticized, that, oh, when you're together, when you have a relationship, that you become a unit rather than two separate, independent, autonomous beings who come together for a relationship. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that too. You have to earn what you get. Gosh, how many times have we heard that when working with survivors, and folks saying, well, you have to do this and this and this to get services. It's like, oh, heck, right? Yeah, money not talked about or not discussed around kids. It's a man's responsibility to provide. Yeah. Money is a huge problem in many relationships. Yep. Yeah. Oh, poor people just don't work hard enough. Gosh. Well, I wish we could talk about capitalism for a while because we could dispel that myth pretty dang quick, right? So thank you for sharing all that, right? And there was a couple questions of someone asking, how do I see what people are posting? And those are sent directly to me. So they're not public. So we don't have public chat in this. So maybe one day we will. Okay, so let's talk the first section about financially abusive relationships, right? So think about when you talk about domestic violence, think about when you think about domestic violence, right? Oftentimes we're thinking about, these negative, unhealthy, abusive things, right? And many times we forget, or conversations about healthy relationships kind of get lost, right? And we may not be able to, we may not be able to define a healthy relationship. One of the most common things when I'm doing presentations is when we, ask, okay, let's define a healthy relationship. Folks are usually like, well, they don't hit me, or they don't insult me. And absolutely that is part of it, right? However, there's so much more to it, right? There's so much more to those healthy relationships. Okay, so all right, so this first one, all partners have access to any and all financial information, right? So this is a big sign for healthy financial relationships, right? So, I mean, think about, there's a difference between, okay, maybe one partner doing the budget and saying, okay, like this is, the budget that, how, where are we at, today, month to date. This is, the bills that we paid, stuff like that, kind of, following up with other partners. That's great, right? However, the big part of this is that those, this other partner, other folks are having access to that, right? So the second one, differences in values are negotiated. So think about, having those conversations with partner, and not only negotiating, but also having, shared maybe financial goals and separate financial goals, right? So, hey, I think, or let's save up for a vacation, or I guess right now, let's save up to get a super sweet PlayStation 5, I don't know, right? Because we're going to stay indoors for a while, right? So, we want to save up for that PS5, right? And so that's something we both want to do. But maybe, one partner is like, oh, well, I want to save up because I want to buy more, Dungeons and Dragons books. And the other person maybe is like, oh, I want to buy more stuff to sew or something like that, right? Absolutely. So we're, in this is that make sure that respect and decision making is equal, right? So, one partner is not making the big decisions for like, oh, well, we need a car, so I want a super sweet new Prius, so I'm going to go out and buy us a Prius. That's what we need for our family, whatever, right? Rather, having those conversations, saying, hey, so I've been kind of looking into Priuses, they're super great, all these great things, and also for our family, a da-da-da might work, well, or what do you think, and kind of getting input, right? So folks having access to their own money. So think about how many of us on this webinar, how many how many folks have their own account, right? And so, and don't raise your hand, don't say anything, but how many of us have our own money, have our own account that our partners don't have access to, right? And think about, even when I say that, maybe some of our bellies are like, ooh, I don't feel super good. That makes me feel weird, right? And ask yourself, why does it make you feel weird? Why does it make you feel weird, right? Is it okay for you to have your own things and your own money? Absolutely, right? So let's see. Yeah, and so think about, just being generally knowledgeable about how and where money is being spent, right? Okay, so financial abuse, right? We know that it's a form of domestic violence. We know that it's a form of intimate partner violence, right? And just like many other forms of domestic violence and abuse, this often begins subtly, right? And it progresses over time. It could be something, little as like, oh heck, I forgot my wallet in my car, when folks go out to eat, or something like, oh, hey, I am a little bit short this month. Could you, spot me, $50 or whatever for, to keep my gas on or whatever, right? And then think about how that may increase to where maybe they get joint accounts and person's like, I don't think it's okay for us to have separate accounts. Like we're together, maybe we're married, that we need to have our finances together, right? And so, think about how power and control is a part of this, right? And so we're using money, we're using this economic part to gain power and control, right? So remember, power and control can happen in many different forms, okay? And of course, this can and often does trap survivors in a relationship. So think of even what's happening now, especially with COVID-19, right? So what we're having is folks, having to stay indoors, not able to go to job, having to work remotely, having maybe more contact with person with abusive behavior, that partner, and think about their avenues, their options are dwindling, right? And we are seeing, an increase in not only technical assistance, but also, domestic violence service providers, sexual assault programs. They're experiencing this huge, sometimes even overwhelming load of folks trying to get services. And it's a really difficult time right now, right? Even more so, without being in a global pandemic, right? And think of even how this global pandemic, think about how even this is affecting folks' financial situations where folks are maybe panic buying, they're spending their resources because they don't know what's happening, right? They don't feel safe, and maybe even compounded in not feeling safe in their own relationship, right? So this little thought bubble over here, 99% of survivors report experiencing financial abuse. That's literally almost all survivors report experiencing financial abuse. We know that it happens, we know that it is happening, and we know that it can be very difficult and problematic, right? So think about some of these things, right? So financial abuse tactics, right? So these different ways that folks are using, let's see if I can go back, there we go. Power and control, right? So stealing money for you and your family, forcing you to work or hand over income, assets, or benefits, right? Forcing you or forbidding you from going to work, right? And think about how, many of these things, when they intersect with, COVID-19, is that it's just intensifying this, right? Say, partners forcing survivor to go to work and saying, well, you need to earn money. I don't care if, this happens or if you get this, virus, that we need money and you need to, pull your weight. And it's like, oh, that's really hard. That's really hard. Controlling how money is spent, and think of even right now with panic buying and people feeling unsafe, so they're going to things that they're comfortable with, right? They're going to things that they feel better with having on stock, or having stuff stocked up, right? Even forcing you to sign or file fraudulent legal documents. So right now, maybe folks doing wills or power of attorney. If survivor gets sick, if survivor does, test positive for COVID-19, think about how, person with abusive behavior, say, okay, so, giving false information, saying, hey, this is going to happen, so I need you to sign these documents, right? Oh, heck, that went a little too quick there. Okay. So, think about preventing from obtaining credit card or bank cards, or maybe overusing, especially right now, right? Especially right now is, well, things are really wild right now. I don't know what's going to happen. We're going to, run out of stuff, maybe like putting this fear, intense fear into the survivor. And then, okay, well, we need to buy things right now. We need to stock up, right? Or even like using the stuff that's happening right now to, even instill more fear. So think about how jarring it is when you go into a grocery store and you see shelves partially empty, or some shelves being empty, right? And if you've been to a Target, like think about how scary that could be, right? And then think about how that can be used and is being used to gain power and control over survivors, okay? Think about how difficult that situation can be. So let's talk about financial safety planning, right? So financial safety planning. So strategies when if and when leaving, right? So a big part of this, and this is, this is difficult. It's easier to say than do, right? Is don't get overwhelmed, take one step at a time, right? And that, that can be difficult. And especially, in, time where we're at right now, that this can be even difficult to kind of maintain this, right, and to not get overwhelmed, because maybe some of us are panicked, we are worried, and then we also, maybe experiencing abuse, right? So it may help to have conversations with survivor or even with self as us as advocates and service providers to take a step, breathe. Maybe we're going to have a self-care presentation in a couple weeks. Sit down and assess what is happening, right? And maybe write, what I'm feeling versus maybe what I'm seeing, right? And that can be really, really beneficial, because sometimes, especially when we're in a crisis mode, which we're currently in a global crisis, that it can intensify these feelings of fear and these feelings of being trapped. So take small steps, right? And the first small step can be literally writing down, this is how I feel, this is what I'm seeing, right? So these next steps. So begin saving money right away, right? And so, think about the money that maybe you've had saved already, or right now, when folks are kind of worried about availability of products, right? Food, stuff like that, is taking stock of what you have, coming up with a plan. So not only safety planning within your home, but also with your money. So, okay, let's check. A big topic is toilet paper. Okay, so let's check what toilet paper stock we do have, right? And maybe even having a conversation with family and saying, hey, family, we love, the Charmin like 75 ply, but we're definitely going to need to kind of cut back. So maybe even saying, hey, instead of, hey Jimmy, instead of using, 15, squares, we're just going to cut back to 4. Okay, so having those conversations, right? Let's see. Okay, so, if you do have money saved, especially right now, assessing your current situation and seeing if you can continue to save that money, or coming up with a plan for those funds, right? So especially for folks who may not be working right now, especially in travel, tourism, food, industry, stuff like that, entertainment, what plan can we come up with to help us plan for the future, right? Especially in this hard time. So what are, take stock of your current assets and liabilities. So what do you have that you own? What do you have that's a liability, right? So take pictures now, categorize them. And this can be even more difficult when survivors do not have access or cannot leave the home, right? So how can this person kind of start this, financial safety planning when they may be potentially, locked in with a person with abusive behavior, right? Okay, so orders of protection. Okay, so I'm really glad that we're going to talk about orders of protection. So many jurisdictions have, especially in Utah, they have online, not only you can submit online, you can do things via email now. So they're doing more video conferencing for court dates and stuff like that, because we can't have groups of people together right now, right? So find out in your jurisdiction, and after this webinar, I will send out a couple updates from the state court system on some of the things that they are doing. So, okay, so court updates. So protective orders can be really great because they can, stop, potentially stop a person with abusive behavior from not only contacting, doing all these things, maybe accessing certain things or people, right? And especially right now, this can be a really, really, really great asset, right? Especially when we're in social distancing right now, and we can't, be within, contact, that this could potentially put that person in another area, right? All right, so yeah, orders of protection can be really great. Right now, they're going to be a little bit tricky to kind of navigate because we don't have access to many of our in-person things. So check for an email for me, and also check and see if your jurisdiction and your district offers online, phone, or email protective orders. Okay, so housing search. So if you're searching for a house, if you're looking for new housing, right? Here are some considerations, some things to think about, right? So this number one thing, so credit reports, right? So if you have, if you check your credit report, or survivor, checks their credit report, but maybe worries or knows that person with abusive behavior, their partner, has access to that credit report, that if you are, opening accounts, or if you are, applying or looking for new residence, a new place to live, those can pop up. Those inquiries can pop up on your credit report, and if person with abusive behavior sees that could be huge, warning sign, like, hey, this person is, trying to leave. They're looking at other apartments. They're looking at housing and stuff like that, right? So one potential, best practice, one thing that can be really limit this is search for private property owners, right? So this can be great. Oftentimes private property owners will do their own credit report, or they will even allow you to provide a copy of your own credit report, right? Because that saves them money and all these different things. So if you are looking for a different place, try a private property owner, right? There are a bunch, they're around. See if they would be willing to do that, right? And also this last one. So if you do move in with a roommate, that could be beneficial if you're not on the lease, or have to do a credit, check, or moving in with a friend, that you don't have to do that. But also, asking, or having utilities in their name, so that it's not coming up with credit checks, or that you're opening accounts, or anything like that, right? And especially if you get email notifications, or mail, with your bills and stuff in it, that if that's potentially intercepted, or forwarded to person with abusive behavior, then they could potentially get the information of where you live and stuff like that, right? So computer and technology considerations. We are having a technology use and abuse webinar in a couple weeks as well. Definitely register for that. We're going to cover a whole bunch of things. So I'm not going to go super into this, because we literally have 3 hours on it. But your personal information literally is online, right? It's not even a question of maybe online, it is online, right? So here's a little homework assignment for y'all. I want y'all to go onto the internet. I want you to search for your name, okay? Every time I do this for my name, new stuff pops up, and I'm like, oh, I don't remember that interview, or oh, okay, so I did present at that conference, right? So do it for yourself. What information is on there? And set up Google Alerts. Set up Google Alerts with your name and with your address, so you can see what is happening on the internet that is attached to your information, your address, and your name, right? And even your kids. Look up your kids' names, right? It's not uncommon for folks with abusive behavior, partners with abusive behavior, to use children's social security number, use children to open accounts, and use that against survivor, right? Okay, let's see. Yeah, and of course, emails. I will give you a little nag about this. Is if you're not expecting the email, if you don't know who it's from, if it seems odd, do not open it, do not click it, do not download it, okay? One of the things I'm most proud of is when I'm doing a core advocacy training and I send out the Google Classrooms stuff for the self-study. Folks who are in the training will reach out to me and say, hey, I got this email and did you send it? I don't know what it is. And I am so proud that you reached out to me, because I would rather you reach out and say, hey, this seems a little off. Like, I don't remember signing up for this. Do you know what this is about? And for me to clarify and say, yep, that's for the self-study. Good on you for reaching out. That's excellent. That's excellent vigilance, right? So here's some examples of workplace safety, right? So workplace safety can be really difficult, especially now, and especially, you know, that intersection of domestic violence, intimate partner violence, right? So it may be beneficial to provide a copy of your protective order to your employer, and even a picture of that person, right? So that if that person does show up, like, hey, this person can't be on premises, this person can't be on property, this is what they look like. And unfortunately, you know, survivors are oftentimes blamed or punished for behavior, you know, things that partner with abusive behavior is doing. And that is really difficult, right? The survivor, this person is a victim of this abuse, is, you know, doing everything they can, the best that they can do, to increase their safety, to literally provide for themselves, maybe their children, family, right? And it's really difficult to hear when survivors are punished for the behavior of other folks, right? And if you have security in your building, you know, ask for an escort, right? Or, you know, depending on maybe your elevator timer in your building, or stairs, you know, if there's multiple stairs, and depending on what time of day, you know, mix that up, right? So instead of going down the main stairs, go down the back stairs, right? There's, you know, even in my office building, there's multiple ways to get out, and I will mix it up, and depending on what day, what time of day, you know, what day of the week, you know, stuff like that. If it's a weekend, stuff like that, it determines on which way I go up and what I do, right? So of course, screen your calls, right? And the really, you know, hard part about this is saving these messages can be super beneficial for using as evidence in a potential protective order, in a stalking injunction, in, you know, other legal and police matters. However, those can be incredibly triggering. Those can be incredibly difficult to not only receive, but then also accidentally view, right? So, you know, be mindful. And of course, if you're working with survivors and they're like, you know what, I just can't see these, that's valid. That is valid for them, right? And it's not our job to correct them or tell them, well, if you don't do this, then you're not going to get your stalking injunction. Say, you know what, that's valid. Here are the benefits of saving it, and here are, you know, maybe some things that could be difficult in saving those. So have those conversations, right? Have those conversations. And remember that even redefining justice and healing can be important, right? And we're going to talk about that next week on trauma-informed care and becoming an advocate. We're going to talk a lot about how, you know, not only we as advocates, but also, you know, folks that are experiencing abuse, how oftentimes we do have to redefine what it means to heal and redefine what it means to feel justice. Okay. So divorce and child support. So this is a big one. Right? Okay, so when meeting with an attorney, any work that you do yourself is literally money that stays in your pocket, right? So attorneys literally charge by the hour. They charge by the correspondence. They charge, you know, it can be different for an email versus a phone call, versus filing something, right? So some attorneys will do an hourly rate, but make sure that you know how they charge. You make sure that you know their payment structure, right? So the things that you can do, the things that survivors can do, is take an inventory of what they do own, right? And so on here, the 1, 2, 3 dot point down, it's 3 different categories: theirs, mine, ours, right? So theirs would be, say they own the Subaru, right? But I own the super sweet Prius, right? But we share the house. So we're both on the house, we're both on the mortgage, right? So write all that down. And even if it seems silly, like, oh, I don't need to, write down the lawnmower, like absolutely write down the lawnmower. Lawnmowers are several $100s, right? These, if you own it and if it's your property, then that can be sold. That can be used for you to increase your fundage, right? So also, again, create a wish list. So if, you're like, heck, I definitely would really benefit and really, need the lawnmower. I, really need the dishwasher, right? So you have a new dishwasher or something, right? Or the house or whatever. Write a wish list, right? These are things that I need, that I would really like to help maybe take care of the kids or survive, right? And then, of course, like determine what it costs to basically live, right? So how much, do you pay for rent or mortgage, or how much do you spend on the kids every month, right? How much do you spend on food? What about insurance, right? And even look at like spending leaks, right? So I know one of my spending leaks is Kickstarter, right? Love me some board games, okay? But I know that that's something that, okay, sometimes I, spend more money than I maybe should on, board games, right? So that, be like, okay, so that's something that I can cut out. That's something that I know that maybe I'm spending a little bit too much on. So what can I cut back on, right? And of course, insurance, it could be really beneficial to call your insurance company and ask, hey, what would the price difference be for me to have insurance on my own, versus with partners, stuff like that. So get those details, right? And of course, legal documents, right? So you definitely want your past tax income returns, right? So many places do them online, so you have access to them online. That can be really great. If it is not safe to take tax returns from the house. So here's an example. If you have a file that you keep all your financial stuff, and maybe partner goes through it, once a month, or, yells at you, assaults you because they're going through this and they're like, you didn't make enough on taxes last year, you didn't do this, right? That they would maybe potentially notice if something was missing, right? So think about that. Most things are digital now, so can you get a hold of it digitally, right? And if you go through the same company each year, reach out to that person who did your taxes. Say, hey, so this is happening. Could I get copies of this, and can I get them sent here? And think about, how you can have those conversations and get those documents. And of course, any other financial documents, benefits, pay stubs, stuff like this, disability, anything, government, name change, anything like that. Make sure you have that. Any documents, even related to your documentation status. So if you're undocumented, make sure that you have your green card, make sure that you have copies of your forms, or if you have a U visa, VAWA visa, T visa, like have these, these documents, right? And of course, pay stubs, most of them are also available online now as well. So you may be able to easily get those through an employer, okay? Okay, so child support can be really beneficial, right? Child support can, help not only pay for your living expenses, the children's living expenses, and take care of those children, right? So there are multiple different ways to pursue that enforcement, and it depends on the situation and your situation and survivor situation, if they feel safe and if it viable to enforce it in certain ways. It could potentially be something that increases danger if person with abusive behavior maybe has moved out and gets their checks start getting garnished, or they get served or something, and that could escalate things. And really have those conversations with survivor. Remember, they know their situation the best. They know that person with abusive behavior the best. So have those conversations and find out how you can safety plan around that, and find out what you can do. Okay. So that's really important. Is to have those conversations and see what resources are available. Calling DWS, Department of Workforce Services, talking to folks at the state or even county level. That can be really beneficial to just get that information too. Okay? So disclosing abuse, okay? So disclosing abuse can be really good, especially if you have a protective order and you have a supportive employer, and saying, hey, this is happening, this is a copy of the protective order, this is what this person looks like, and them watching out for this person, and also calling when this person shows up, right? But also disclosing abuse could put you not only at risk, but also it could kind of close off your options for things, right? So think about, I've heard a bunch of horror stories. Some of you on here have reached out to me, and even, have shared some stories about with housing and being a survivor of intimate partner violence, and that being a barrier. And many, landlords are wary and nervous of renting to a victim or survivor of intimate partner violence, because the fear of property damage, violence, these good landlord laws, which we can go into for hours, right? Think about how these are affecting survivors, right? So think about how a person with abusive behavior can use this, especially if they know how good landlord, policies and acts and laws work, is that they can literally use that to displace survivor, to, force survivor to lose housing. As well, I know that if I keep showing up, you're going to keep calling the police. And I know that when the police show up to your house, the more times they show up, that you are going to get evicted, right? So think about how that can affect survivor, okay? And have those conversations, right? So part of being empowered and not only having a voice is also getting to choose when, where, and who you disclose that abuse to. So remember that there's a distinction there, right? And when you're having these conversations with survivors, to talk about that empowerment and you feeling empowered, like what does it mean to you? What does it feel like to you, right? And also empowerment can mean these things. It can feel like this too. What do you think, right? Okay, so let's see if we covered. Yep, we talked about that. Yeah, and so the third dot point down, even possible referral to child protection. So Utah, we do have a law that it is a mandatory report, mandatory reporting issue to report domestic violence perpetrated, in front of a child, right? That is considered child abuse in the state of Utah. So think about how, if a survivor discloses that, hey, my partner is abusing me, I have 6 children, many times partner forces one or more children to be in the room while they're hurting, yelling, abusing, sexually assaulting me. I don't know what to do, I need help. That's scary, not only to admit that, to talk about that, disclose that with someone, but also that does open up to a DCFS mandatory report, right? And we do have resources for that. We have a presentation on DCFS. So I can also send that information so you can watch that and follow up on that so you have more information, right? I wish I could go into all of these topics for a long time, but I only have an hour, okay? So yeah, so think about maybe the organization, policies, services that survivors interacting with. They may have domestic violence clauses in there. They may have specific protections for domestic violence, right? And I love this down here at the bottom. Talk to your advocate to create a disclosure plan, right? So think about disclosure being a part of that safety plan is, hey, when, where, how, who do you want to disclose to people, right? How do we determine who is safe to disclose to, right? So privacy protection, okay? So we're gonna talk a little bit about identity theft for the last couple minutes here. So you've probably heard identity theft all over, maybe in the news, on the internet, interwebs. Maybe a friend, family member, you may have experienced this, right? Well, we're going to go into a little bit of detail here. So there's a couple of different types of identity theft, right? So, basically when someone steals or uses your identity, your personal information, your finances, stuff like that, right? So the two different types, we have account takeover and we have application fraud. So account takeover is when someone uses, abuses accounts that you already have. So they take that information and they use it, right? So think about when you get that notification from your bank and you're like, heck, someone just bought some home decor in Iowa, right? And you're like, I heckin' haven't been in Iowa, and I haven't bought any home decor, right? So that would be an example of account takeover, right? Think about a victim or survivor whose partner, person with abusive behavior, is using their credit card, is taking it, saying, oh, well, my credit card's maxed out, or, well, I haven't been working, or, because of social distancing, I can't go to work, so we need to buy food, we need to buy these things, so I need to use your credit card. You're going to have to just use yours, right? So that's an example. Application fraud. You may have heard it as true name fraud, right? So this is when someone uses your information and they sign up for new accounts, right? So think about a big example is, those pre-approved credit card offers that you get in the mail for like 43% APR, right? Don't sign up for those, okay? If I could make eye contact with all of you right now, I would. Do not sign up for those, okay? So those, you can opt out of those. So again, I'm going to send you the FTC opt-out stuff after here. Make a little note for myself. You can easily opt out for those. You can do a 5-year opt-out, or you can do a permanent opt-out. But it's good for you to do it, right? You don't need those. They're, really high interest rates, and, victims of crime are targeted to get these really terrible offers, right? So opt out. Talk to your survivors about opting out, okay? But that is an example of true name fraud or application fraud, is when someone intercepts that and fills out that form, sends it in, 3 days later, they have a $10,000 credit card in your name, right? So you don't have to talk to people. You can do it online. They've made it so incredibly easy because they want you to buy stuff on their credit card, right? So opt out of that. That's really, really big. Okay, personal data vulnerabilities, right? So when you get these credit card offers, don't just look at them and go, oh, heck, another one, and throw it in the recycling, right? No, shred those, shred those, shred those. Remember that when your garbage goes to the street, it's now free for anyone to go through that, right? So it's not protected just because it's your trash bin, that if it's on public property and it's there, that people can go through it, right? So if you're not destroying those, they can get access to not only your date of birth but social security number, but also think about them being able to literally sign up for a credit card in your name, right? Stealing mail from the mailbox, right? That's big. You can get locked mailboxes, right? That can be really beneficial, or you can get a PO box, right? What is it? 1, 2, 3 dot point down to accessing your credit report. So I don't necessarily want y'all to answer this, but I want you to think about this. How many of us check our credit report yearly, right? How many of us check it more often than that, right? Many banks and credit cards now have the option to check your not only your credit score, but also your credit report. So the bank that I go through, I can log on, I can check my credit score and my credit report, and it gives me updates. It says, hey, this is why your credit score went up, or this is why your credit score went down. This is some things that you can do to change it, or oh, there's a new inquiry, right? So that can be super beneficial, and especially because they're free services that are offered through banks and stuff that you already have, right? But one of the things that we do see is we see people with abusive behavior and folks, partners, ex-partners, is that they are calling and trying to access these credit reports, posing as employer or loan officer, or even as you, right? And think of when you're talking to someone on the phone or even via the internet, like you may not see that person, you can't verify their identity, and the person in the call center has no idea what Andy Tremonti's voice sounds like. I mean, unless they Google me and check out these sweet webinars, but they don't know what I sound like, so they don't know if someone's calling. And Andy is a unisex name, so who knows what the voice could sound like, right? So think about that, okay? Information brokers, when you I don't know if you've heard of information brokers or information databases, but sometimes you'll get pop-ups or ads, or maybe if you're like Googling your name and then it pops up and says, background check on Andy Tremonti, $34.95, and you can literally pay that money. You're paying an information broker for them to give you all of the information that's available. So information brokers, public databases, like this is information that's publicly available that these organizations, these companies have literally compiled to make it easier for people to get information on one person, right? There are hundreds, if not thousands, hundreds, okay? So if you can, go on there and you can opt out of them, but it's big because you'll have to opt out of many of them, but you can do it. So the number one thing that I suggest that, best practice is to know what information is out on you, to know what is on your credit report, to know what is about you, right? So that's the first thing, because when you know what's out there, you know what needs to be changed, and then you can take steps in doing that, right? Okay, so here is our little ending slide here before we do resources. So I want you to chat in on this section, or this part here, right? So, you can answer one of these questions. What were safety considerations that you were unaware of before this, right? What are things you didn't think of that could potentially be dangerous for survivors and even yourself? What are some things that you learned that you maybe want to incorporate in your safety planning, right? Even this third one is very interesting. What feelings came up? So maybe the things that you grew up learning, or were socialized or taught in your household, like what came up that was like, oh heck, I didn't even think about that, or oh yeah, that makes sense, right? So type some stuff into the question box. So what were you unaware of? What do you think that you'll use from this in your safety planning, or your job, your position, or even your personal life, right? Ooh, so awareness, having more extensive awareness about where your information can be found, right? I definitely suggest all of you register for the technology abuse webinar, because that one is going to give you a lot more information to help protect yourself and to what to look out for. Someone has a really unique kind of intersection of experience with finance and maybe DV, and not even thinking about how pulling credit scores and credit checks can be dangerous for folks. Thank you. Yeah, people being alerted. that credit report being alerted. So think of if you get notifications for fraud on your credit report and stuff, that person with abusive behavior could potentially be getting those same alerts, right? Ooh, encouraging clients to open personal checking accounts or saving accounts, even with a small amount. Absolutely, right? It starts small, right? So a good example I like to use is think about diets, right? Say someone's like, heck, I definitely want to lose some lbs, right? Definitely want to lose some weight, right? If you go on, this like really intense diet, one day you're eating, how you normally eat, and the next day you're on this intense diet that you may, lose weight for a little bit, but after that you're gonna, you generally gain it back. It's kind of, your body's like a little shocked over it. But if you make these small changes, like, hey, I'm going to go for a 10-minute walk today. Tomorrow I'm going to go for a 15-minute walk. Or, today I'm not going to have 3 cookies that I would normally eat. I'm going to have 1, right? So think about these small changes that you're making. And that could include, excuse me, opening a personal checking account. So yeah, credit reports monitored. Personal information can be used against them. Yeah. It seems like the credit report monitoring is really big. That y'all was that was the biggest one. Yeah. Even evaluate your own financial situation. Yeah, this is great. Okay. And someone had a question about CEUs. So many of our webinars do offer CEUs. And there's one of the cats coming to say hi. And so I can also send out a link or a list of the ones that do have CEUs. So we have a bunch of them that do offer CEUs for this webinar series. So you all have been lovely. You have been great. Thank you so much. Here's just a couple of resources that I want to just throw at you. So these are really great resources. You will get a copy of this, and also download it from the handouts section. Just do a little quick download, okay? So Love is Respect, super great. This is really cool information and advocacy for young folks, okay? Especially with dating violence and dating relationships. Futures Without Violence. Many of you have these cards in your offices, in your organization. Futures Without Violence is excellent, right? So they have a lot of really great information and resources on their website for not only victims, survivors, but also service providers. So Break the Cycle. So this one is another great organization that works with young folks, okay? So especially with dating violence, teen dating violence. And we have the domestic violence, the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Really great resources, 24 hours, 7 days a week. And so remember that when you do call some of these numbers, that right now, especially with COVID-19, that there might be a little bit of delay. So it may be best for service providers to access information via the web due to the increase in calls, right? So we have the domestic violence hotline for Utah, so the link line. So this is again 24/7, right? And you can call us at any time. You can get on our website, udvc.org. You can email me. I'm going to send you a whole bunch of resources after this. And also, I am available to you. Reach out to me, email me, okay? I'm not in the office right now, so you can call my office line, but also you can email is probably going to be the best. And so we have a whole bunch of different, resources. We have Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Our website, YouTube, has a lot of our recorded webinars, and you'll see the ones that we have this spring and summer on there as well. So here is my contact information. So definitely reach out to me. So yes, this is a picture of my sweet Jorge, who has been meowing a little bit on this little webinar. So here's my office number. If you do call me, make sure to leave a voicemail. If you call me and do not leave a voicemail, I will not call you back. I need to know, especially, in that voicemail, I need to know that it is safe to call you back, even if you're a service provider, right? And if you call as a service provider, on my caller ID, it says 00000. You're automatically blocked. So I don't even know who it's coming from. So make sure to leave a voicemail. I definitely love voicemails, okay? Especially when I don't have contact with people right now. I love my cats, but I definitely need some people right now. So yeah, leave a voicemail, give me your number, repeat it, say it slowly, and then I can get back to you. Of course, email me. You can just Google, this is sad, you can Google me, and my contact information is going to be all over our website and the internet. So yeah, I think, make sure there's no other questions. Okay, you all have been lovely. Thank you for participating. I hopefully will see all of you next week. And enjoy yourself, stay safe, and distance yourself socially. Bye.